Morning. It's Thursday, April 30th, I think. Getting ready to go plant a small field and then we'll spray the rest of the day. Not going to be much wind today, and we want to try to get as much of the soybean ground sprayed as possible. A couple of quick notes. So I mentioned yesterday that we cracked this bracket, and I wasn't sure how. I think there's a pretty good chance it's from the marker whacking into the toolbar when I pick up. It's right, like it's cracked in that piece of flat steel that's bent into a 90. I'm hoping that we can kind of heat that up and bend it back and maybe V it out and weld it. Get some weld down here, won't hurt anything. Try to get that fixed. The other thing that I don't think I mentioned on the video yesterday, so it was windy, quite windy. I think I said that once or twice. So as long as I can remember, there's always been a bucket that lived on top of this oil reservoir, because since 7 rows plant off of one hopper and 8 rows plant off the other, you normally run out of the 8 row hopper first and then need to transfer some over to get the hoppers totally empty, or if you're at the end of the variety or whatever. And as long as I can remember, that was this bucket. It was so windy yesterday, it blew it off. Which wouldn't have been a problem other than it blew it off, and then I think it went either under a row unit or under a wheel, because it has some nice ventilation now. So I found a new bucket to live on top of the oil reservoir, and we're going to go try to plant about 20 acres of beans. Hopefully shouldn't take too long. It's a small field, but it's not too bad of running. The rows predominantly are fairly straight, although the borders are not very square, but hopefully it shouldn't be too bad. That particular field tends to be a little wet in a few spots, so I think that with as much as the wind blew and the sunshine yesterday, I should be pretty safe. One of the west spots we got a tile run into last fall, so that should help also, but gonna go do that, and then that should get the planter pretty well empty. And I'm not sure what my plan is for late today or tomorrow. If I get everything that I want to spray sprayed, I may plant some more later tonight. Regardless of what happens, we're going to be able to find things to be productive the next 3 days, and then it looked like there are some chance of rain Sunday afternoon and evening and kind of the beginning of next week. One other thing that I just noticed that we probably might take a look at before I head to the field, there's a oil cooler back behind these louvers. So the fan that provides the blower is up underneath here, and all the air comes in through there so that it cools the oil. So basically it's just like a radiator for hydraulic oil. And since it was so windy yesterday, there was a lot of trash getting blown up, and there's all kinds of crap stuck. The one in the center there is even worse, I think. So I'm going to pull this up at the shop and try to blow some of that out, just so that we get good airflow into the fans, but also so that our hydraulic oil doesn't get hot. With it being fairly moderate temperatures, I'm not as worried about that, but there's enough stuff in that one that it might restrict the airflow. Fan on. Monitor on. Well, it took a little bit longer than I'd hoped. Some areas that were wet, some areas that were pretty hard, some areas that were soft from where we had terraces built, but it's done. Next on the list is switching over some electronics to the sprayer tractor, and I'm gonna go spray something. It's about 10 after 9, and I just got the tractor and sprayer pulled into the shop here. Door going down. got along reasonably well this afternoon, or today in general. I don't think I did a video after this morning because I think I didn't have the camera with me. So I got a little over 20 acres planted, or a little under 20 acres planted, I should say, and then switched over to spraying. Got about 165 acres sprayed, I think, somewhere in that ballpark at least. Had a little problem with the center section valve. So basically there's a little motor inside that box with the green knob on it that opens and closes a valve in the bottom part of that turns the boom sections on and off. And I was going across the field and looked back to check the pressure, and I had 0, even though the center, this red tube actually gives you the pressure for the center section of the boom on a gauge on the front of the sprayer, which is kind of what you use to set the rate on everything. But looked back and I had 0 pressure even though the switch was on. I unplugged the switch box, turned the things manually, and plugged it back in, and it started working. The second time it happened, I troubleshot it a little bit better, and it seemed that the motor was getting power, and if you turned the boom section on and then came back and got it started, it would go the rest of the way. So I don't know if there was like some dirt or if there's a plastic gear or something in there that's getting wonky. But anyway, after I did it the second time, I brought it home, asked Dad if he'd ever had any trouble, and he hadn't. But we did sort of jiggle the connections to the battery. One of those was maybe a little loose, although that seems a little sketchy because the outside boom sections always work, or seem to. But anyway, the last load, it was fine. So have to keep an eye on it. Definitely going to have to make sure I remember to look back and check the gauge every time I turn that center section on for a while until I trust it again. But I guess at the end of the day, we've got 165 acres sprayed. Other than there might be a stripe or two across the field that's 20 feet wide where the center section wasn't on when I thought it was. Where I was spraying when it happened both times was where there's rye, so I should be able to see pretty easily in a week or so once everything starts to die down if and where I had any skips where that section wasn't on and I thought it was. So that might be a little bit of a surprise next week, but in the meantime, things are moving forward slowly but surely. Morning. It is Friday, May 1st. I think so. Gonna plant beans today. It's gonna be pretty windy, although it's really not yet. I wonder if I should try to spray, but I think we're gonna plant. Before I plant, Dad noticed yesterday I've got a little problem here. The wheel bearing on this side has completely disintegrated. I'm hoping nothing is too screwed up that a new bearing won't fix it. I mean, that I don't need anything besides a bearing, but we're going to find out here shortly. Alright, wheel is off. So there's the axle that was sitting in here, so I was able to get the bolt off this end and then push the axle through. So you can tell that the axle is nice and hex shaped until about right there. That's where the bearing should have been and isn't. That whole inner race is gone, isn't it? Interesting. Anyway, not ideal, but I think we can make it work. There's actually some spacers that were on this end that I think we can just switch the axle end for end so that the part that's damaged is in those spacers. And as long as I can get a new bearing in here, which we had one. Not really sure when this went out. It's not something that I study very closely, I guess, because I've never had one go out before. But clearly ran longer out than would have been ideal. There's a pretty good gouge right there too, isn't there? My only concern is if this inner plate is damaged where it won't hold the bearing in, then we may have to make a new plate or chase down some parts. I think it might be okay, because it seems like there's kind of chunks of the seal that are stuck on the inside there, so I think that maybe most of the damage is just on that inner flat surface rather than making the hole bigger. It looks like on this one it kind of clamps the outer bearing race from the sides probably, but I don't know that I've ever had a bearing out of one of these. The plates came off with minimal effort, and I think this one seems like it'll probably be okay, at least in the short term. You can see we have some nice metallic Carnage here. I think there's like a washer on the inside, on each side it looks like. And I'm guessing that bearing might be kind of growed into the arm with as rusty as those bearing plates were. But so far, it seems like it should be fixable. Alright, bearing is out. Wasn't as bad as I feared it could be. So this is what it should look like. This inner piece is totally gone. There's a row of metal balls in between this piece and this piece are all totally gone. We've got some shrapnel from the seals, and then that outer race sort of came out in pieces. The thing about bearing races is they're pretty hard, so if you whack them with a hammer, actually that one looks like it was cracked sometime previously, because see how it's rusty? You can tell in the video. Like this right side is nice and gray, but that's kind of rusty, dirty. That's probably been cracked for a while. That's where I broke it, to get it out of there. So that maybe could have been the point of failure to start with. But I think the arm looks fine, so I'm going to do a little bit of cleanup on that. I'm not exactly sure this guy. So I think there's a washer that's sandwiched in there, and I don't know if that's just so that the plates hold that bearing tight. So I thought there was one on each side, but it turned out it was just like the seal that I was seeing, or maybe the lip on the bearing. So, I don't know. Get some emery cloth, clean up that hole, start putting stuff back together. The new bearing is in. I did a little bit of cleaning up on this thing. Kind of filed off some burrs and some spots over here that would have been in the bearing on this side previously, so it was kind of wobbling and kind of gouged the shaft. Good as new. I did end up having to put some washers back behind here. I think we may have clearanced the casting a little bit from rubbing. So in order to keep the tire from rubbing on the arm over right there, added some washers. I also went down the line, and both bolts on that one and one of the bolts on that one were also loose. So I may need to add this to my pre-season checks to tighten those and pick the planter up or pick the wheels up and try to assess the bearing condition before the season starts in the future. I'm pretty sure this is the first bearing that I've ever done. We've had stuff apart to replace tires or get tires fixed. So it wasn't exactly something that was on my radar to be watching, I guess, and with the pusher units and this wheel only doing something when the planter is raised, I never was really back here in a position to notice, I guess. We've also got the marker off on this side to kind of try to fix that bracket adapter thing. So I think Dad's working on getting that bent back and the crack V'd out so I can weld that. And it's about 8:40 right now, so I may be to work before my banker yet. Got the marker back together and on the road to a field a couple miles away. I'm going to plant off the rest of the beans that are on the planter and then switch varieties and do about a 53 acre field, something like that. And then kind of see where we're at on stuff. May change my plans from what I thought they were going to be depending on weather to try to get the 110 acres that's a few miles away done in one shot. Since there's kind of chances of showers, there's going to be probably blocks of time that I can work Saturday, Sunday-ish, but since that one's a ways away and kind of a pain to move everything to. I'd like to be able to do it all in one shot when I plant, and ideally when I spray it also. But for sure when I plant, because it's going to take probably a solid day. It's a nice big open field, but there's terraces that go all over the place, so it's not a quick one necessarily. There shouldn't be very many of this soybean on the planter, like probably 5 acres, I would guess, 5 or 8, less than 10, pretty much for sure. So hopefully this won't be too big of a deal, and then we'll get rolling on that other field and see how many soybeans we can get in the ground today. Well, I didn't think I had very much on there, and it looks like 3.98 is when we ran out. I did have to stop and move some seed from one hopper to the other a little bit ago. But it looks like we had empty pockets in both holes when the monitor started going off, so I think we should be in pretty good shape. I'm just going to pin up the markers in case we meet anybody going down the road and head on to the next field. The wind has come up some. It's not super windy yet, but windier than would be ideal for spraying, so it's good to plant. Bearing's still good. I lost that one. I was planting cover crops last fall. Been around in the four-wheeler several times trying to find it. Never did. But I saw it yesterday when I was spraying, so I knew right where to look for it today. Also, found a chunk of fence post. All kinds of treasure. I've got some in-rows planted, and maybe an hour into the decent going on this field. As usual, things are not going as quickly as I would like. What all we broken today? Tried to hotwire the alternator on the tractor that pulls the seed wagon, and it seems like the alternator is shot. Also broke the sort of catch mechanism that holds the auger back to the seed wagon. There's a grass lane that goes back a half mile from the road here that we basically need to have access to this field, but it also creates a really nice home for every sort of burrowing animal that you can imagine. And it's a little bit rough at this point, so I'm guessing that probably bouncing across there basically broke the bolt that was welded in that the latch mechanism pivoted on. So Dad was working on that. I'm not sure if he got the old bolt drilled out to get another bolt put back in, or exactly where things are at with that. I haven't broke anything on the planter yet. We did try to kind of cobble together some stuff on this right-hand marker to keep it from bashing as bad. I don't know if you can see the little black rubber piece there at the hinge sort of blowing in the breeze, but tried to sort of put a few layers of inner tube in there to kind of make that not bash quite as hard. And we also, Dad's idea was to put sprayer hose on the end of the tube, the end of the toolbar square tube there. But the vertical piece, there's no way to wire it in. It made it about 3 rounds or less. I'm not exactly sure where I lost it, but it's gone. I'm not sure if the inner tube is necessarily solving the problem. I think I really need something a little wider than that. I've been getting along pretty decent, sort of cheating when I pick up so that it doesn't bash the toolbar quite as hard. The problem is if I don't pick it up all the way, then there's something like in the valve contraption there in the middle of the toolbar that won't let it drop the next round. So then I get 20 feet ahead with my hand on the lever and then look back and the planter's still in the air. So trying to figure out a way to make that work that doesn't require me to back up and fix gaps like that. So anyway, I'm gonna keep rolling. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a baby corn plant just coming up. This field was planted just over a week ago, I believe. So we're seeing fairly quick emergence really for this early in the season. Definitely cracking through. This was one of the earlier fields I planted, but not one of the first ones. So I'm not sure if how those fields are doing. I've been too busy planting soybeans the past couple days here. It's about 8:20 and I'm headed for home. I'm out of seed, so we got the rest of that variety of soybeans all planted out. And I'm kind of running on empty on the fuel gauge, so need to get to a diesel barrel. Got probably 75 acres or so in today. Would have liked to get more, but such is life. So, gonna take this home, fuel it up. It isn't even completely dark yet. May look over the planter a little bit, and I'm feeling really ambitious, do some greasing, because I didn't grease it this morning, since I didn't plant it very much yesterday. Haven't looked at a forecast, because I've been turning my own steering wheel, and running my own markers and all of that jazz. So I'm not sure what the latest line is on the rain situation here in the next few days. I think tomorrow was supposed to be nice. Unclear exactly what my game plan is. I will either plant something or spray something, or maybe both. Not sure where, not sure which, but we'll figure it out.